Track 4.1, Unit 4, Listening 1.
Hi everyone. I want to share some research I did for our project. I decided to focus on the discovery of the controlled use of fire. By controlled use, I mean when people started to use and maintain fires to benefit their daily lives. According to research, no one is absolutely certain when fire was first used regularly, but researchers have discovered enough objects from daily life to conclude it was between 300 and 400,000 years ago. There are only theories about how the people first discovered they could use fire. From what I found, it seems that the discovery of the controlled use of fire dramatically changed the lives of our ancestors.
Wow, I never thought about life before fire, or life without fire. Can you give us some examples you found of how life changed?
Sure. First, fire was used to provide warmth. This meant people could live in more places than ever before. For example, findings confirm people started to live in colder climates that had been too cold to live in before without a source of heat. Second, fire provided protection at night from wild animals who were afraid of fire. In my view, by building fires at night, our ancestors were able to greatly improve their own comfort and safety.
So there were two benefits at night: heat and protection?
Absolutely. Both were very important. For me, though, the third benefit is one I had never considered. The controlled use of fire enabled people to cook food. Being able to cook our food is something we take for granted, right? However, cooked food, researchers suggest, was a major turning point for our ancestors. The impact on their food choices was huge. Meat and plants that had been too hard to chew, or too difficult to digest, or unsafe to eat raw, could be eaten once they were cooked. Thus, cooking gave people a lot more food options than in the past. Cooked food was especially helpful to babies, young children, and older people. Furthermore, cooking helped to preserve food. Thus, food could be stored and used later when less food was available.
In general, then, you're saying that the controlled use of fire allowed people to have more food choices day to day and thus maintain a better diet, right? That does seem like a huge benefit.
Researchers claim it was. Their findings demonstrate that as our ancestors adapted to eating a wider range of food, they were healthier and able to survive longer.
All right, so far we have warmth and expanded living options, protection, and cooked food. How about other benefits, like having light to see at night? Wasn't that a major change?
Sure. The controlled use of fire allowed for more socializing at night. Once people had light, they could occupy themselves playing music, making tools and clothes, and so on. They didn't have to go to sleep when it got dark. This was a huge change in our social history. I read that some researchers consider using fire a step forward in our use of technology. For me, technology usually means electronics, computers, mobile phones, and so on. However, they say technology is the application of knowledge to improve our lives. Using fire for warmth and to cook food fits this definition, doesn't it?
Sure. So then we can say discovering how to use fire was an important advance in our use of technology.
Track 4.2, Unit 4, Listening 2.
Today, we're going to look at how a forest fire is both friend and foe. Some people claim that it's a foe, that is, an enemy, because a forest fire can become a natural disaster. However, others view it as a friend, because a forest fire keeps a forest healthy and growing. First, forest fires as natural disasters. A forest fire can move through an area quickly and destroy almost everything: homes, trees, buildings, animals, and people. For example, the Black Saturday bushfire in Victoria, Australia on February 7, 2009 was one of the worst in recorded Australian history. Over 2,000 homes were destroyed, and many people and animals were killed. Every day, there are hundreds of forest fires all over the world. According to recent research, we're seeing that climate change has had a big impact on forest fires. Studies have found that forest fires in the U.S. have occurred nearly 5 times more often in recent years than in the 70s and 80s. These findings confirm that higher summer temperatures are causing areas to be hotter and drier for longer, thus increasing the risk of forest fires. While many forest fires are started by lightning during a rainstorm, others are accidentally started. For example, first someone drops a burning cigarette or builds a small fire, and then, suddenly, the fire gets out of control. After a forest fire breaks out and starts to spread, the next response by most people is to try to get the fire under control and put it out as quickly as possible. They know a forest fire can have a terrible impact. They want to preserve trees, people's homes, and avoid destruction if possible. However, controlling the fire isn't always the best idea. Scientists have demonstrated that forest fires play an important role in keeping forests healthy and the ecosystem of a forest in balance. So, turning now to the more surprising idea of fire as a friend, what are the benefits of forest fires? Well, there are several. After forest fires clear away dead trees and plants on the floor of the forest, this provides open space for new plants to grow. The new small plants are low to the ground. As these plants grow and become visible, they provide an easy source of food for small animals. These new plants also provide more nutrition for animals than older plants. In short, a forest fire is a bit like cleaning a house. The fire clears out the dead wood and plants in the forest. Afterward, it's a healthier place for trees, plants, and animals to live. The fire also makes it safer for the people living nearby, because by removing dead trees and plants, it lowers the risk of hotter, bigger fires in the future. Researchers have found that trees, plants, and insects that live in areas that frequently have forest fires adapt to these conditions in order to survive. For example, the cork oak tree doesn't burn easily. After a forest fire, the outer part of the tree may be totally burned and look dead, but the inner part of the cork oak tree is still alive, and the tree continues to live. They've also found that forest fires benefit certain trees and plants, animals, and insects in specific ways. Some trees need fires to spread their seeds. For example, a tree-like bush in Australia called the Banksia bush. First, the Banksia bush burns. Next, its cones open, and then the cones release seeds. Eventually, new trees start to grow. The point is, the cones must get burned a little before they will open and drop new seeds. Thus, fire helps to maintain the forest. One insect that benefits from fires and has adapted well is the blue beetle. The blue beetle has heat sensors that enable it to detect a forest fire up to 50 kilometers away. You might think the beetle would use its heat sensors to avoid the fire, but it does just the opposite. Here's what happens. The blue beetle senses a fire. Next, it starts flying into the burning area. Then the beetle lands and lays its eggs in the trees that have been burned. The beetle knows this wood is an excellent food source for its eggs. Consider this. If the beetle laid its eggs before the fire moved through, the fire would destroy the beetle's eggs. In sum, there are positive outcomes of forest fires. Yet they can cause terrible damage. The question is, does the destruction justify the advantages? This is difficult to answer. After a fire, a sequence of events takes place which restores the forest's ecosystem. First, fast-growing plants and grasses start to grow. Then slower-growing plants emerge. And then, lastly, new trees grow. The first steps happen quickly, but it can take many years for a forest to return to health.
Track 4.3, Unit 4, Critical Thinking.
Every day, there are hundreds of forest fires all over the world. According to recent research, we're seeing that climate change has had a big impact on forest fires. Studies have found that forest fires in the U.S. have occurred nearly 5 times more often in recent years than in the 70s and 80s. These findings confirm that higher summer temperatures are causing areas to be hotter and drier for longer, thus increasing the risk of forest fires. While many forest fires are started by lightning during a rainstorm, others are accidentally started. For example, first someone drops a burning cigarette or builds a small fire, and then, suddenly, the fire gets out of control.
Track 4. Track 4.4, Unit 4, Grammar. 1.
I got a box of chocolates for my birthday. You want some? Wait, you told me you don't like chocolate, right?
2.
Hey, did you hear about that big fire at the theater downtown last night?
3.
I thought that movie was fabulous. What did you think of it? Did you like it?
4.
That is a beautiful photograph of your wedding. Everyone looks great.